What's a subtle sign that someone is a good person but doesn't want to show it?
Had a teacher growing up that came across as very strict and standoffish. Gave off this air of, learn the material or fail. In reality though, he would answer any questions you had, even if it was being repeated. Was incredibly patient, and would stay as late as he needed to in order to make sure the students understood the material. If a majority of the class bombed a test, he would address it with the class to understand what went wrong, and would redo the material if needed. Looking at him or just popping by his class, you'd think he'd be a typical hard ass. But in reality he cared immensely about making sure we understood our lessons and were prepared for the next year. Probably a boring answer, but I have this friend who I can just tell is really sincere when he asks how I'm doing. I appreciate anyone asking because it's a convenient conversation starter. But with him I can tell he actually cares what the answer is. When you're in a group and that one person keeps trying to say something or add to the conversation, but they keep getting talked over, then that other person will look at them and say, "Sorry person, I didn't catch what you were trying to say. Can you repeat it?" And make space for the person being ignored unintentionally. That's a real gem. My ex-wife's father was diagnosed with a stage 4 cancer. About 2 months before he passed, my in-laws' apartment burned down. No renter's insurance. Almost everything went up in smoke due to electrical fire. They moved in with us. Right around same time my AC went. So I called a friend of a friend and he came out to look at AC. Did a $800 or so job and we were just shooting shit and I told him casually about the fire. He wouldn't take a penny and told me to use the money to buy something for her parents at their new place. Bedding. Whatever stuff they needed. Wouldn't take the money. Full stop. I used the money for their security deposit on the place. None of our so-called close friends did such thing. No one bothered to even ask how they can help. About 6 months later, he invited us to his birthday party. We went and I said a toast, telling everyone how good of a person he was. I had a hard time finishing the toast, because almost everyone choked up, except my ex, who looked at me like I was scum. When we got home, she said, "I was so embarrassed you were singing him praises. You don't even know this man and yet it was like you were trying to climb up his ass. You're pathetic." It didn't matter what they did, apparently, because I put out the cash. The fact that I was going to pay that money to him and he didn't take it. Giving it to her parents apparently didn't matter. So here are the two opposites. No regrets. Admonishes people for being rude to wait staff. I was at a family dinner at a restaurant years ago, and my sister was very rude to the waiter because her steak was overcooked or something. Really went hard on him. And my brother's new girlfriend, who always seemed a shy and quiet person, told my sister to basically stop being a bitch and that the waiters didn't cook the food. And you're embarrassing all of us. Everyone's looking at us, etc. From that point on, I knew she was a good sort. They are given a chance to quietly talk bad about someone, but instead, says something good. Discretion. I see it as a sign of empathy. Most of times, at least. They anticipate that openness may be undesirable for you and so they remain discreet in order to make you more comfortable, be it regarding some information you shared with them or when helping you out with something. No questions asked. Helping others for the sake of helping them without expecting anything in return. True merit is like a river. The deeper it is, the less noise it makes. Edward F. L. Wood.
They say take your time.
I waited tables at a pretty popular New Mexican restaurant when I was in college. There was this one manager. Her name was Rosie. And she never smiled. She always looked like she was pissed off at everyone and everything. The entire waitstaff and bus staff feared her. When she walked into the kitchen and wanted something, the line would immediately jump to her demands. It was rumored that she was the person to fire any employee when an employee was fired. The only people that didn't seem to be scared of her were the hostesses. They were always talking to her like she was just any other manager or person in the restaurant. She scared the hell out of me for the first year I worked there. I made sure that she never had anything to be upset at with me. One day, I came into work sick as fuck and having just a really bad day. She took me to the side and talked to me for a good half hour. Just asking questions about my day and how school was going. Towards the end of the conversation she said I didn't look good and that if I wanted to, I could take the night off. Rosie was the best fucking person I ever met inside the restaurant industry. From that day on it was my goal to make her laugh. I never did make her laugh, but I got a smile out of her quite a bit after that. She was not just a good person. She was one of the best, but man, you wouldn't know it unless you really took the time to look. She was one of those types of people you know had had a hard time in life and put up a rough exterior. But deep down she was a softie and loving grandmother type. I hope she's happy in her retirement. When you are having an argument and they actually listen to your point instead of just getting ready to make theirs. I've discovered that often what appears to be indifference is actually an internal struggle of, I am extremely concerned about this but I don't think that it's any of my fucking business or requires my intervention. When someone is actually in trouble, needs help, they will help out, even if it's really subtle or disguised as something else. For instance, there was a kid in my school who had a reputation for not caring about others, doing whatever he wanted, and tried to convince everyone that he pretty much had no emotions. I think he thought it made him seem more tough and hardcore. And although he didn't necessarily do anything bad to anyone, he tried not to seem kind either. Once, one of my friends at school had some sort of emergency where she needed, I think, $30. Most people in class either didn't have $30, which was quite a bit for a kid to bring to school, to loan her, or they just didn't want to give it to her, thinking they would never get it back. And she was panicking. The teachers couldn't help her for some sort of legal reason. I think she wanted to take a taxi to the hospital because something had happened to a family member, but was slightly underage. And the teachers had to pretend that they had no idea she was doing this. So, this kid with the reputation collected money from all of his friends, since he didn't have the money himself, under the pretense of another reason. I think it was something like movie tickets or something for that evening. Then, he privately gave it to her, but told her not to tell anyone it was him. I was close friends with her and was actually standing right next to her when he approached us and told us this. She managed to get to the hospital on time, while he paid for the tickets or whatever with his own money once he got home. When she later offered to pay him back, he refused, insisting that he didn't do anything. I think he knew that her family would struggle to pay that back. They were having some financial trouble. I guess it's not extremely subtle in my case since I was standing right there. But that was the first time I began realizing how some people pretended to not be a good person, when they actually were. Guy the first used to work with was such a class clown. Always cracking jokes. Everybody liked him because he was so funny. It was a while before I realized that his jokes were never at anybody's expense. He was kind. There was never anything mean in anything he ever said, to anybody's face or behind their back. Anyway, we're married now. They pick up litter and put it in the bin without posting a picture on social media saying, "Ew. Guys, this is so depressing to see." Single quote. When they try to shoo away the little bluebirds circling around them. I was at school with a guy who was the king of the cool kids. He was always getting busted for breaking school rules, drinking, smoking, bad-mouthing the teachers and so on. In fact, he did a bit of jail time later for non-violent low-level drug dealing. I was the uber geek of the school. I didn't get bullied as such. But I remember one time that his cool gang kids were ribbing me a bit too much. And he stepped in and told them to cool it. And a bit later, when I won the school academic prize, he went out of his way to sincerely congratulate me. In fact, a few years later, and after the jail time, he became pretty well known as a TV personality and had his own show, where he was generally lauded as giving the impression of being a really nice guy. Which, in this case, he was. For me, it's a combination of things. Speaking up for someone who is not present, listening, empathy. The person who asks, "How are you?" and genuinely wants to know. Giving responses that show understanding.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.